The Sandra Birchmore case serves as a stark reminder that child predators can blend seamlessly into society, lacking any distinctive appearance or profession that would typically raise alarm. This is a great time to remind my loved ones here that danger can often be disguised in familiar, friendly forms, even our heroes. Sandra Birchmore, a vulnerable young woman, was the emotional and psychological victim of a group of men who exploited her admiration for police to sexually abuse her. Aware of her lack of family support, they viewed her as an object to be used for their own gratification. One man in particular chose to end things with her and for her, once and for all. Allegedly, Matthew Farwell. Reading the affidavit about Sandra and her abuser, Matthew, and the others was profoundly upsetting. And we're going to go over bits and pieces of the affidavit today. This crime is based off the tragedy of not one, but two lives that were taken allegedly by none other than a beloved family man and an honorable police officer by the name of Matthew Farwell. The fact was, Sandra, who was in her early 20s, was pregnant, allegedly with Matthew's baby, when she was killed. Yep, married, living a double life, the whole thing. And here's the guy. Matthew Farwell is 38 years old and had resided in northeastern Massachusetts with his spouse and his children. That was up until his recent arrest. Now, Matthew Farwell had an impressive set of skills on paper. He served in the United States Army from 2004 to 2008 as an explosives expert, and then Matthew Farwell became a sworn police officer in 2008. From 2008 through 2012, he was a police officer for the town of Wellesley, Massachusetts. And then he became a Stoughton police officer. There, he utilized his experiences further as a firearms and explosives instructor. The department that Matthew worked at, and at the time, had this really cool opportunity through what they called Stoughton Police Explorers Academy. Its design was to expose youth participants to various aspects of policing. This is something that I easily could have pictured myself and many others encouraging their children to participate in. And other parents did just that. They allowed their children to be introduced to this whole other world of leadership and safety designed to encourage, inspire, and educate the youth for many generations to come on what being a police officer is like. Matthew was a volunteer for this program. He became the Police Explorers instructor. Top dog of the whole thing. He had several roles as an instructor, including teaching firearms and explosives safety and conducting canine demonstrations. At the time, Matthew was already familiar with the police explorers because he had also been a participant as a teenager. Additionally, Matthew had gotten married in 2013 and would go on to be the father of 3 children with his wife. So, you, me, and anyone else, everyone else, we would look into this and we would think, what a good guy, what a great program. So in March of 2010, this sweet little girl, age 12, applied to be a participant in the Police Explorers, and her name was Sandra Birchmore. She began participating in this program when she was 13 in 2011, all the way until she would graduate high school in 2016. Sandra was very unique, really just a spirited young woman who faced some unfortunate things in her childhood. Her mom, she was pretty sick while she raised her as a single mom, but her aunt and her grandma also assisted her. It was like a team of family members of these strong women that were bringing up Sandra when she was growing up. However, sadly, her mother would die in May of 2016, her grandmother also passing away, and then later in 2019, she lost her aunt, but no dad. Her stepdad had died when she was young, and her biological father was not in the picture. So there is no father figure for Sandra. But Sandra was a bit of an opportunist when it came to her future anyway, and she deeply respected authority figures, specifically police officers. Naturally, Sandra found a sense of belonging in the Youth Explorers program. This was Sandra's big break. This was her chance. She was going to be something great. And it might have turned out for Sandra that way had she actually gotten her chance. But unfortunately, the leaders had other things in mind. Sandra had also endured significant mental and emotional problems from an early age. and she was too open about too much, which we'll get into a little bit later, but she wore her heart on her sleeve. But the academy was an opportunity, and this was a good thing for Sandra until it wasn't. Years down the road, Sandra would confide in her pastime leader, Matthew, in October of 2020 that she wanted a baby of her own. At this time, Matthew is still married, and actually, he is expecting his third child with his wife. And this is what he said to his pastime student from the academy, Sandra. "I'll be the guy, as long as you are silent about what I've done." 8 years prior, on October 28, 2012, Matthew, her instructor and hero, sent Sandra, his student from the academy, a Facebook request to add him as a friend. This, of course, would come to be just about 7 months before he would marry his wife in 2013. Sandra was 15 years old when he requested her friendship online, and he was 26. While using the internet to lay groundwork for his child sexual exploitation, Matthew Farwell would not only flirt, entice, and invite an inappropriate relationship with Sandra online, but started meeting her at the library, where he would sexually groom her under the guise of providing academic tutoring. Eventually, he engaged in sex acts with Sandra Birchmore, violating the Massachusetts statutory rape law by having sexual intercourse with her in 2013 when she was only 15. About a month later, he married his wife. Matthew Farwell continued to have an affair for years and years with this young teenager, having sex with Sandra Birchmore all the way until after she became an adult and while he remained employed as a police officer. This offense included while he was on duty, being paid. There are many factors of proof in the affidavit that indicate that he knew that he was using work time to continue his affair with young Sandra. For example, on April 10th, 2020, Matthew wrote, "I'm going to sneak away from work real quick." On November 24th of 2020, Sandra asked if Matthew would be on duty while the two were scheduled to meet. Matthew responded, "Yes, I will be on the clock." The text messages between Matthew and Sandra indicated that the purpose for at least some of the encounters were to engage in sex acts. Other examples include that Matthew sent Sandra text messages directing her to act as if she were being AR'd during the ensuing encounters. Later on a text dated February 21st of 2019, it was clarified that it was more than just sex with Sandra that day in 2013, and more than likely for her, I imagine, giving her heart to the only man who noticed her enough to treat her special. You know, as adults, a lot of us have been there while we were already adults, being sought out on social media by our own abusers. So it's really tough to think about a teenager who had no father and had a mother that was really ill and having all these women help out, make up that difference. And then she meets this guy, this leader that's in the uniform, and he's supposed to be her authoritative figure at that time, someone she really looked up to. And he's giving her this special treatment as a powerful influencer in her life. When you think of it that way, it must have meant a lot to her. She recalled the day that she realized that she had a crush on her instructor as a child. She ended up telling Matthew, "I'm glad that it was you that did that. I'm glad that you took my innocence." And Matthew twisted the message of being a gross predator to insinuate that she too had meant a lot to him as well. He would confirm back to her he had wanted her too. He spoke openly with her in messages about the first time that he did it with her. In March of 2019, he revisited that day once again in his mind. "What would you have done had I not used protection?" She said, "I would have still finished school." Smile face. And she carried on. "I loved prom night. It was worth not going to prom." You can tell right here there is a huge immaturity gap. He's like, "What would you have done?" He's all trying to be nasty with her, and she's like, "I just would have went to school." But that's how she was. She was so young. So after she crossed the legal age limit, in the age legal enough for her to be doing this with an adult, they continued to see each other behind Matthew's wife and his kids' back. He was totally living a double life with this girl that had grown up to be of age, and they're still getting it on. They're still doing it. But on February 11th of 2020, about a year later, he visits that memory of 2013 all over again from when she was a child, an early teen, and when he took her innocence from her. Sandra remembered the experience however, as a passionate love affair. I had butterflies so bad the day that you took my innocence. He said, me too. It was such a big day. I don't know, guys. To me, that just sounds like a kid that's like, I scored my first goal in soccer. And the dad's like, yeah, me too. What a nice day. Great job. He's just totally trying. He's overgiving here. He's, me too. What a big day. She says, still know the date to this day. And he's like, really? She said, yes. And then he just cuts her off with a smile face. She said, that's not a date I'll ever forget. I'm telling you guys, this is like passion for her. And she continues, it was April 10th of 2013, but he doesn't care. He just smiles. And then she says, best day of my life. Heart emoji. And he says, me too. February 21st of 2020, he said, I wish it had been a year sooner after helping you study at the library. You still listen and give me whatever I want, baby. I didn't even make you wait a year after that. And she continues, and good. But I don't think you're going to get what you want next time. So he said, of course I will. I'll just take it. She said, that's what you think. Good luck with that. He said, what was the first day you said, oh my God, I want this guy to be my first. I want him inside of me. She said, yeah, so 2012, I finally decided that I was going to try and find a way to F you, and I just wasn't sure how. And she said, how did you feel when I asked to make your dream come true? And he said, amazing, with an exclamation mark. And she said, well, good. And he said, I absolutely would have F'd you in 12. She said, in 12, and he confirmed, 2012. By June 19th of 2020, Sandra Birchmore and Matthew Farwell had the following conversation, to which Matthew reminisced once again about the same fantasy regarding his past criminal actions with the minor Sandra Birchmore. She said, I'm glad that you agreed to take my virginity, though. And he said, me too. Now, Sandra would continue to remember the experience in a form of making love, but Matthew felt an itch to explore what if conversations with her from when she was a pure, underage minor to him. Something about remembering that day differently gratified him more through his imagination. He would fantasize about Sandra just being a little bit younger and using no protection at all. He said, haha, laugh out loud, probably laughing at her, but if I pushed, I could have absolutely effed you without protection from day one. She said, probably if you really pushed it. And then this little innocent side of her comes out and she says, I was kind of scared to say no in the beginning, not knowing how you'd take it. So yeah, I guess you would have gotten what you wanted. Then she kind of mirrors him, lol, haha. Matthew wrote in a text stating that he wished he had been intimate with her even earlier. Now, Matthew, he wrote in that text that, hey, I wish you would have been a little younger. We could have done this sooner. Moreover, text messages additionally showed that Matthew maintained his sexual interest in children for years. And because it was what it was, and he couldn't change the past, he initiated Sandra to relive it differently for his sake of pleasure. He desired Sandra to pretend instead to be 13 or 14 years old when they were intimate. Just a little younger. And he initiated role-playing with her when he was intimate that insinuated that she were related to him in some form, as if they were blood relatives, but instead she would be the child in the scenario. He fantasized about this scenario a lot. And then in time, he would have her pretend that she didn't want him to take her. Like, pretend like I'm R-ing you. Resist me. And she gave it to him like that. That's how they would role play. Either she was the kid, I can't say the word, but yeah. Or that he was hurting her, doing something that no isn't enough. I'm the boss, I'm the dominant, tell me no and, I'll have my way. That turns me on. Additionally, text messages between Matthew and Sandra alongside Sandra's own journal entries revealed Matthew's efforts to punish her with violent sex acts. This violent sexual punishment started as early as 2013 and continued until 2020. Evidence that came out later would show that Matthew used sex acts to punish Sandra for getting bad grades, lying to him, or being sexually active with other people. Now, this is Matthew's thing, okay? His iCloud account exposed a variety of different dark, like black web type of memes, jokes, and just really, really yucky inappropriate things that we can't talk about on here, but the affidavit is 63 pages. It says it all. Check it out if you need to, and if you do, there's no shame in it, because my encouragement is to always educate yourself on humans like this as much as possible. I'll share one, okay? Just one though. A meme glorifying a person who kills and sexually abuses someone who no one will miss. Now, from what I understand was that someone ended up telling Sandra that Matthew's wife was pregnant with his third child in October of 2020. And think of it is, his wife was due in February of 2021, so she's been pregnant while he's been using Sandra on the side, and she's much older at this time. Sounded like she had enough of the control thing and being the side chick. But also, additional to that, I also feel and think that she started to learn and mirror his actions. I think that she began to really see how non-empathetic and in control and how much power he had over her. And so in turn, it seemed to me that this was an opportunity and that she was going to play the same game back. So she decided that she was going to say something after all these years to his wife, and she drafted a text for his wife. And in that text, it said, "I'm just messaging you to inform you that your husband Matthew has been cheating on you since before you were even married." But there's no record showing that the draft was ever sent to Matthew's wife. So what I think happened was that was just a quick initial response, probably out of anger and emotional pain, distress, because she thinks she's in love with this man. So she goes with plan B. That is when Sandra told Matthew that she wanted a child of her own, because by now she knew that he was a married guy, and she was also aware, that he's building his whole life on the side. Life is just kind of passing them by. It's been years and years. And more importantly, she was very aware that he had been breaking the law with her since she was a minor. And yet he didn't know about this part yet, but she had been going around, okay? She'd been going around telling people, I got a boyfriend. He's married and he's a cop. So here's what happened. Matthew and Sandra, they reached an agreement that he would try to impregnate Sandra in exchange for her silence about his criminal conduct, meaning all the child abuse that he had done and the years-long extramarital affair. So she was pretty excited. She's like, really? When he agreed to this? Because in her mind, remember, she's doing these things, but she doesn't understand that this isn't love. This was also her first, right? The guy that took her innocence. So she's like, okay, all right, cool, let's make a baby. Yet this was also Matthew's out. He's like, okay, fine. We've kept this secret all this time. We can do this. I think allegedly, unless this was premeditated, like I'll just give her what she wants, use her for a little bit longer, and then I'll take care of her myself. I don't know what he thought, but he agreed to it for some reason. And then suddenly she's like wanting him to be involved. He's like, oh, no. You're getting the wrong idea. She wanted him to sign the birth certificate, and he just wanted her to shut up. He's just like, don't talk about this. Don't say anything. Fine. Fine. We'll keep it down. I guess I'll give you a baby, but you can't say anything, He was willing to do this at all cost, even if it meant giving her what she wanted to be quiet. Or at least that's what he told her he was willing to do. She texted him, how would you feel about us having a baby, you being there and signing the birth certificate? And there's never going to be a need for your information anyway, so you'll be safe. And I won't talk crap about her or your kids. That way, we both get what we want. Text messages between the two revealed Sandra sent Matthew a photo of her ovulation schedule. Then they discussed timing their sexual encounters to align with specific points in Sandra's cycle. Approximately 1 week after, Matthew agreed to have unprotected intimacy with her in order to conceive a child. However, they ended up having a disagreement of the terms that they agreed on because she didn't get pregnant the first try. And he said, I said the agreement was once. That was our compromise. And she said, I asked you if we could try this month. Didn't realize that you meant F me once, LOL. And she said, and then I asked if we could try through this year and you said you would think about it. The conversation continued October 13th of 2020. He said, our compromise was one time. She said, yeah, it was to try this month. And then she kind of lays it on him thick. She says, so you're thinking about the second thing I said as far as the rest of the year? And he reminded her, or maybe even is manipulating this. He said, you said Try once this month. If it happens, it's meant to be. Those are the exact words. From October through November, Sandra really pushed this guy, like really laid it on thick. Like, are we having a baby? Are we doing this? No, I don't accept that. We said try this month. Let's keep trying. Are you thinking about trying for the rest of the year? We got to have a baby, Matthew. You know, that's the pressure on him. And he's like, dude, the walls were closing in on Matthew. She kept pressuring him from October through November. Then, suddenly, Matthew received this poster notice from Sandra on December 28th of 2020. I mean, this is like right after Christmas, you guys. She says, congratulations, we're going to be parents. But Matthew was extremely angry. I literally have nothing to say to you right now. How could you express that in a text when I said I don't appreciate it? I mean, he snaps on her. And then they continued to argue in text about the pregnancy. How far are you? She said, well, regardless, we're keeping it, but 3.5 weeks. She continued, this means I conceived this month. He said, okay, well, we need to talk then. And she goes, no crap, that's obvious. And then she paints it on more. And the birth certificate is being signed, or hers isn't. And she is referring to his wife. So this is getting really dangerous, because not only has she taken what she wanted from Matthew, and this is a permanent thing, but now she's like, yeah, and you're going to do exactly how I want you to do things when I want you to do them for the rest of our lives. We're having this baby, Matthew. At some point they're arguing, and she said, I'm mad at how you're acting over a choice we both made. And she said it in caps. And he said, I'm mad that you act like you gave anyone a choice. And she said, laughing my butt off, oh, so you didn't have a choice? ? He said, per usual, you make and do whatever you want. Well, isn't that calling the kettle black? She says, all I did was say, can I have it? You said, have what? And I said, you know what I'm asking for. And you stood up and said, yeah. You've been doing that. You're mad she's due in February and I am due in September, and you don't know how you're going to be there for both of us. And you need to be there during the labor for me too, because your kid should matter. Late August, early September. She's referring to the due date. He said, you are truly the worst person on the face of the earth. After the foregoing conversation, Sandra threatened to expose Matthew's prior sexual abuse and their ongoing relationship. Like, she's really got this guy by the balls. And he didn't respond well. I mean, right? Like, he's just messed up. He's like, I just wanted to have some fun. You were a good little girl there for a while, but now you're getting crazy. Like, as if his participation in this had no bearing. Like, I was just doing what you consented to, and look at what you're doing to me. He continues, for the past week and a half, the doctor wasn't right, but now she was, and you just throw it at me because you've got me. You honestly have no idea how to treat people. I have effing bent over backwards for you. Now you want to act like this was some free will decision. You have threatened me from the word go if I didn't do and give you what you wanted, that you would ruin me. I made a deal with you and you changed the terms at every turn. We will deal with this tomorrow. It's absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. He's treating her like his daughter, like, wow, you snuck out at midnight when I was sleeping. I'll deal with you later, young lady. And on December 29th of 2020, he and Sandra met to talk in person, but you can tell that she got that punishment that he was telling her, okay? Because in a text after, this is what gets said. She said, it made me really uncomfortable and stressed out and scared when you were next to me because I thought that you were going to hit me after what you said and took things out of my hand. That's why I was crying. I know you wouldn't, but it still scared me. Well, this is Sandra's red flag. Are we sure that he wouldn't, right? Outsiders looking in, it's so easy to say that, but we know he would, based off the actions that he's already done. And some of us have been there. You guys know my story with my son, you know about my abuser, like just sleeping on it another night and waking up to another day with a prayer. Sometimes that's your survival kit before you would lose everything. And the fear of having nothing and being a vulnerable pregnant woman, I can speak from experience, is absolutely terrifying. That is when a woman deserves to be loved and supported the most. She's creating a life. She deserves to be loved and supported after what this guy put her through. But one thing about Matthew remained, and had always been that way, and will probably forever be that way. He's out for numero uno. He's out for himself and his other life first and foremost. He was so used to taking, receiving, stealing everything away from her. Like she was a piece of meat. Like she meant nothing. Like she held no value to this guy. That making a baby, okay, it's a big deal. I think it's all suddenly hitting this guy now. Party's over. It's time to get real. Now, at least 3 witnesses have disclosed that in weeks prior to her death, Sandra told them that Matthew was physically violent when Sandra and Matthew discussed the pregnancy. According to death records, she was 4'10" and he was 6'4". I mean, huge difference. Additionally, a witness confessed that Matthew put Sandra in a headlock and he grabbed her cell phone from her hand. Matthew had gotten angry with her for showing him the fetal sonogram. According to Sandra, Matthew told her, "That is not my child. I don't want anything really to do with you." And then he shoved her. He pushed her to the ground. The person that heard this told Sandra to distance herself from Matthew, but given that he was dangerous and a police officer, and he obviously did not care about her or the law. However, this person was also very aware that Sandra appeared to be attached to Matthew because he had taken her innocence when she was 15. Then her therapist disclosed information as well that Sandra's longtime therapist reported in weeks before Sandra's death, Sandra reported to the therapist that Matthew got upset about the impending pregnancy and he shoved her. Sandra had people she confided in about the troubling physical aggression that Matthew displayed toward her after she conceived. He would do these really crazy things, like take her phone away and take her computer away, and he would use his own body, guys, his own body, 6'4", to shove her, pregnant. On January 4th, 2021, more texts insinuated the gaslighting and abusive nature of Matthew. Sandra tried to communicate with Matthew regarding her due date, ultrasounds, genetic testing, gender reveals, and doctor appointments. In his text responses, Matthew was unresponsive or very dismissive of these topics, or he appeared to ignore them completely. January 5th, she asked him to come over so they could talk about the first appointment and how it went, since he obviously decided to dismiss going and continue the topic related to their baby. The affidavit says he did not respond directly to that. January 6th, she said, "You don't have to sign because if I'm allowed to at least list you and they can have your name, then I won't move near his family." She compromised. "I won't complain about the holidays, but I would like for you to come a few days before Christmas and Easter so you can see what they get from me, and I don't want you to leave them out." When she says they and them, the child. "If you want to try and support the child, we can talk about that. But I do want you to still see the child." She said, "I'm really trying to be as fair as I can, and I want you there for the labor. That I'm standing my ground on." He said, "Okay, we can discuss this more in person." She said, "Okay, I figured. Does this sound kind of okay to you?" He said, "It's a lot to think about. It's so much more than you have ever asked for." And she said, "And it's still less than what any other girl would ask for." Now, Matthew learned that despite Sandra getting the pregnancy that she wanted, that he would not be able to control her or the information that she would possess about his crimes. Like, no matter what he gave her, because he already gave her what she was looking for, right? And now the pressure's on him like tenfold. She's not going away, okay? They've made a permanent decision. But things get really bad. Really bad. On January 20th of 2021, someone had given a tip to the police department and disclosed information about Matthew's sexual conduct with Sandra. A Stoughton Police Department employee told him about the call. He freaked out. He said, "Don't ever tell anyone about this again." And then he goes to Sandra, and it's not good. "Dude, your freaking friend called my job, Sandra. What the F?" I mean, he's really mad. And she's like, "Huh?" He goes, "Your effing friend just called my effing work to complain about me. WTF?" She goes, "I don't know." She's playing the game back. You know what I'm saying? She's all, "Oh, okay. I mean, I'm more worried about our future together, Matthew. So you gonna sign or what?" He's like, "What do you mean you don't know?" She said, "I literally just woke up." He said, "Did you steal from her?" She goes, "Nope." He said, "What is going on? You also told me that no one knew about us, and yet she claimed we are getting intimate. We're effing." And she's teasing him, guys. She's all, I don't know. It's literally nothing. And he's like, "What are you talking about? This is my job, Sandra. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen," essentially is what's going on. He's like, "Bad girl. You're a loose cannon," basically. "How could you?" Oh, What else do I have to worry about, Sandra? Who's coming up next to say what? What's the future look like now? How many people are you talking to, you know? Also, additionally, he was going to be potentially charged for wire fraud, which is in the affidavit, because it's not just the abuse and breaking the law with her. It's the fact that he was doing it as well with her, communicating with her, while he was using the good people's tax dollars and their faith in him wearing the uniform on the job for their safety to go screw around on his wife, right? For years, something else that's in the affidavit, I'm just getting into it is a lot, so I don't want to overwhelm you. It's a lot. This is a very complex case, but he had taken certain steps to make sure that they were deleting contact with each other. He would tell her like, hey, delete that. You know, she'd do it, and he, good girl, you know, and he would just say these things to her, and then he'd be like, make sure you delete that. And then she would. And then for some reason in his mind, he sort of thought that this was something that couldn't be recovered. And a police officer with that frame of mind, of all people, super surprising. But yeah, just letting everybody know that your stuff can be recovered. There are professionals that can do that. So now Sandra, she would end up dying, okay? And we'll get to it in a sec. But what happened was a week before she died, suddenly she tells a friend, she says, Matthew's coming around. It was so great and weird at the same time. He asked for a key to my apartment. So she ended up getting a key copy made, and she gave him a key. And she told this friend, but it was so strange because when he came to my apartment to get it, he was like looking around. He was going in the rooms and he's all like checking things, and yeah, very strange behavior. But anyway, he brought me a ginger ale, so that counts for something. Like she's looking at the little things. He's coming around, you know. He brought me a ginger ale. I got control. I got this. He's probably not going to sign the birth certificate, but he's there. If he's asking for a key, he wants to be connected. So she's like thinking that, you know, she's got the higher hand, and she's like, you know what? I could totally give you the passcode to my apartment complex, Matthew. Feeling really proud of herself. And honestly, it's kind of sad because she should feel like she's getting some control back from this guy and all the things that he's taken from her. I mean, they are having a baby, right? He participated in this, so this is happening. And you could just tell from the response when she said, I'll give you a code to the apartment. This is what he said. The code that you gave me was the general one given to the entire building, not just the one assigned to you. In passive aggression, he's telling her like, you think that you have this, but you don't even know your facts. And he's lashing out at her really hard. Not that he's ever treated her with respect at all, but he's what she knows. This is her thing, man. She's like, she's not letting it go. And now you can tell that he really hates that he's lost control over his prey. And guys, this is just the storyline. She's not prey. She's a wonderful person that should have still been here with her baby. I hate saying it, and that's how he saw her, the way that he used and abused her. So anyway, she's going on to plan all this stuff. She's so cute. She's planning who was going to look after her little cats when she went into labor. She's all like, I need to make sure the kitties are going to be okay while I have this baby. And you're coming and you're going to be there by my side, right, Matthew? This is also, you know, right before his wife's due. So she's like probably needing him more than ever. But on the side, he's got Sandra, and she's over here ordering baby stuff, Google searching things about her pregnancy. She's looking up photographs, you know, official pregnancy announcements. The more that he's trying to turn the knob down to keep her quiet, the more she's like getting more excited about the whole thing. And he's just over here losing it, okay? She even planned an OBGYN appointment on February 10th of 2021, which is really, really important. All of it's really important because she was just gonna live, man. She was gonna like take care of this baby, and she was gonna do the best she could to get him to be involved. But this was her love child, okay? She planned this. She wanted this. This meant everything to her. Now, on February 1st of 2021 at 12:19 p.m., she sent Matthew text messages indicating that she was released early from her job at Sharon Public School. Matthew ended up telling her that he was not coming or going to be near the area that day. Later in the afternoon, she told Matthew that she had received an early gift in the mail and that she was not planning to have a baby shower until late March because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then she tells him, and by the way, when I learn what the gender is, I want you to go shopping. I want you to buy the clothes. Like, she's just all about it. I love this part of the affidavit, and it's also very heartbreaking because you can tell he's just boiling up. On February 1st of 2021, she's seen numerous times. She's coming in and out of the elevator. She's bringing in food. She's going back out. She's bringing a baby car seat in. She's, bringing in a snow brush, things of that sort. But here's the important thing, that later that evening, 9:08 p.m., Matthew ended up texting her, and he's like, hey, do you mind if I come by for a second? At approximately 9:10 p.m., she sent him a text message indicating that when he arrived at her apartment, the door would be open for him. And that's the last time that anybody ever heard from her alive again. On surveillance, February 1st, 2021, Matthew went to Sandra's apartment in Canton, Massachusetts, wearing a COVID-19 medical face mask. He entered her apartment complex at 9:14 p.m. Once inside, allegedly, he killed her and staged her body to make it appear that she had died by suicide or unaliving herself. He left the complex at 9:43 p.m. 12 hours later, Matthew would be at his wife's side holding his newborn son. Now, I'm aware that there's probably podcasts and, other people that are like, they're building the intensity. He went in and he went out, but she was never alive again. Man, the guy's arrested. Look at how much she was upsetting him. And I know that it's like this ongoing thing right now. Did he do it? Did he not? Because of what happens next. But come on, we're here for the truth. Let's talk about it. At the time that Sandra was killed, she was working as a teacher's assistant, and this is going to shine a lot of light on Sandra because the whole time, we've kind of aligned her to be this very confused, desperate, troubled young woman from being a kid. But the truth was, you could tell she had her own apartment, she had her own vehicle, and she had her own job. So she had her independence going. It was like she was growing up, she was about to become a mom, and she's not taking certain things from certain people anymore. And as a teaching assistant, it sucks because the kids loved her so much. That spirited immaturity around other certain adults really worked well. Like, it brought out the best in her, and it brought out the best in the kids too. They said, man, she was so good at her job. She just loved what she did. And she was aspiring to be a nurse later down the road. This man, he took so much from her. But when you think about it, she was not giving up. She was like a battery with no brakes. She just kept going. And she was like, I'm having this baby, man. I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to do things with my life. She didn't really just stop at the whole, I gotta be a cop because my boyfriend's a cop thing. She went off and tried new things and found that she was really good at these other things. However, at her job, employers within the school, though she got along well with the kids, it was the staff and the peers and, the people at the school that worked alongside her that said she overshared. She was too much. Like she said too much, far too much. She was always telling people about her personal life. She was telling people about how her boyfriend was married and he was a cop. And people wouldn't even ask to hear these things. They were just sitting next to her. And what I got in my head was this image of this girl that's like, guess what? My boyfriend, he's a cop and he's married. And people were like, okay, thanks. But even her friends would say that she was emotionally stunted. She struggled with communication cues and boundaries. And she was described as an emotional and angry individual at times. And I don't know. I'm just going to give you my personal opinion. I think that has to do with needing to have been raised in certain areas of her life, not used. That's why the way that she was in these other areas where she needed improvement really also additionally pisses me off when it comes to the cop. What he was doing to her was keeping her small in her head, pretend you're a child. Let's go back to when you were 2013. Pretend that you're resisting me. Like, this young woman that had a huge future ahead of her was so distracted with her personal life and what this guy was doing to her. Keep it on the down low. Don't say anything. Come see me when I'm in my uniform. Climb on up here on my lap in the car. Everything was just made about him. Like most abusers, everything, the whole world turned around him when it came to her. But she was telling people about him finally, and then she was telling people that she was pregnant. She was like really excited. She'd go around to random people in the grocery store, at her apartment complex, the staff at school. She's like, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. She shouted it to the moon. However, February 2nd and 3rd, she was a no-show at her job, and the school resource officer called authority to report that she hadn't shown up for work. At 11 a.m., The authorities went to her apartment complex where they discovered her car outside. Snow was piled on and around the vehicle, indicating that she hadn't used her vehicle because the last time it had snowed was back days ago in February 1st. Once building management handed her apartment keys to authorities, they entered. Her apartment was said to be disheveled. There were 2 cats running around the place, mail piles, medications, trash, and they checked around before opening her bedroom door that was closed. They found the body of Sandra in a seated position with a rope secured around her neck, and the rope was tied securely on the other side to the handle of the closet door. She had been there for several days. I will spare you the details. It does describe her body. She passed. Okay, she had been dead for some time. Now, according to police reports, her cell phone was found on the floor like a foot away from her right hand and 6 inches from her bent knee. A log report indicated that the phone was locked on February 1st of 2021, okay, the day that he went into her apartment, until the device powered off because of battery loss on February 3rd of 2021. Also on February 1st of 2021, while the phone was still locked, her phone recorded a screenshot of a black screen at 9:18 p.m. In other words, after sending her final text the last time she was alive to Matthew to tell him that the door was unlocked, her phone locked and was not unlocked until after the device was recovered by police. Health data on her phone indicated that the last movement recorded by the phone on February 1st of 2021 occurred at 9:40 p.m. That was 3 minutes before Matthew was captured on surveillance video leaving her apartment. The phone recorded no additional steps between 9:40 p.m. and the time it was recovered by first responders by February 4th of 2021. That's not normal because every day of her life she used that thing. Like, she was just glued to it. So the chief medical examiner had ruled this a suicide. Her apartment was noted by Sergeant Michael Lang to be a bit of a mess on the counters, trash, the mail, the meds, but also on the counter space was an ultrasound showing that she was pregnant. Stoughton Police Chief Donna McNamara was contacted by a detective from the Massachusetts State Police. Donna McNamara conducted an internal investigation regarding the death of Sandra. Obviously, her family learned about this tragedy and they started contacting police of her relationship that she had with a married police officer. However, when they offered this as exclusive information, well, they were not told about the fact that he had been at her apartment the night that she allegedly died. So that was withheld information from them. As her loved ones came to clean her apartment after her death, they felt they could confirm there were no signs showing she was attempting to end her life in any way. She had been doing laundry and there was baby stuff stockpiled, including a onesie that said, "We're going to be parents," with a set of footprints underneath. Also, family members found a necklace that belonged to Sandra lying on the floor of her bedroom. This necklace consisted of a thin gold chain with a pink flamingo charm. The family member observed this and saw that the necklace chain was broken, but not at the clasp. There was a large clump of hair on the chain, potentially indicating a struggle. The report that they took said while the strap was still around her neck, the necklace was broken and hanging from the left side of her neck. The necklace's charm, however, was on the right side of her abdomen. Now, Matthew goes on to get questioned, and it's just very casual. They actually end up pulling him over in a school parking lot to question him. He also lied to detectives a lot, and he ended up telling them that he had started seeing her when she became an adult and he only slept with her like a handful of times and that he hadn't seen her since 2020 and it was now year 2021. And he says, "I've only slept with her like a few times, but between January and February of 2021, this guy slept with her at least 10 times that would come out that they knew of." And that was just in that short time span. Like, these people, Sandra and Matthew, had been seeing one another for a long time. So he had been with her a lot. But he continued to lie and lie and lie. He painted himself as some kind of heroic leader, like, I did a bad thing, but it's not, I shouldn't have done it, but okay, I'm just sorry to hear this news. And then he tells them, also she was pretty emotionally wrecked as a person. And he tells them that she had been sectioned numerous times in the past. And what that means is by the Massachusetts law enforcement officers, they use that as a term to refer to practice of involuntarily hospitalizing on a temporary basis a person with severe mental health issues. Now, the last time that something like that happened to her was in May of 2020. That was also the year of the pandemic. Mind you, she has been a secret to a married cop for a long, long time. And it said that she got angry at somebody close to her and she lashed. And the person ended up calling the cops on her. And she was admitted for a very short time. They were like, we just don't want her to hurt herself. And she was fine. You know, she came out okay. But later she would end up texting Matthew, I'm sorry that I worried you. This thing happened. And he goes, I wasn't worried about you. Everything was fine. Within minutes that she returned home after she had been admitted, he started sexually trying to engage with her then. I mean, if that doesn't say a lot about his character or how much he ever cared about Sandra, then I really don't know what does. It's very serious when it comes to your mental health. And he's like, I don't care. Let's hook up. You're fine. Even though she had a lack of support from family at the time, because of her situation, you know, just everybody just kind of wasn't there for her. And she was going to start a life of her own with her baby and hope that the child's father would want to participate in some way. Not that I condone what she did. I really don't. But it's a lot like Micah Francis with JP Miller, right? As soon as she got out of that and away from that, that was when she sort of knew, oh my gosh, you know, I've been groomed. I've been used. I've been manipulated. And I really thought like all the things he was telling me was right. So I don't condone what Sandra did at all. But I do want my audience to remember and understand that this guy got a grip on her mind at the time. And so in my opinion, I feel that she was doing kind of what she knew was best. I mean, who knows what wasn't even said in the affidavit or located on cell phones and computers, what this guy had to say to her. I mean, he could have been whispering sweet, sweet nothings into her ear and telling her, I love you. You're the love of my life. I'm going to leave my wife. And was smart enough, just like delete those messages, to not say anything in writing. We don't know what kept her hanging on all this time. But everybody else that was in her life, you know, they knew that she was an opportunist and had potential. And she was not trying to unalive herself whatsoever. Now, there is evidence that suggested that Sandra was struggling with unaliving ideation, if that makes sense, from 2016 to 2018. And the sick part about this is that they're saying Matthew probably knew about this because that was the time that he was grooming her. And so, of course, as all monsters do, they wait until the victim can't talk anymore to say, oh, well, they had all these different issues. The victim was very troubled. The victim this, the victim that, and the third. They say just the worst things about the victim when the victim isn't there to speak. That's what I personally think we're seeing here in Matthew. Also, mostly because there was no evidence at all that after May of 2020, she was interested or struggled with ideation of unaliving herself ever since May of 2020. In fact, that was probably for her a very happy and good time to be alive for the most part. The police could not find any evidence anywhere that she was struggling or checking herself in places or any calls suggesting that she was troubled and needed to check in and get mental help. Besides therapy, none of it existed. So he was sitting there telling the police, you know, yeah, she's a hot mess, you know, and I'm aware that she needed mental health assistance many times. Well, following her death, he was actually put on administrative leave. Instead of feeling sad or grieving at all that someone he helped, trained, got to know while she was alive and well, if his story were to ring true, I mean, that would just be really sad. She was so young. But instead, he went to a bar and he whined. He complained that he was upset that he was being looked at and investigated. Because on February 9th of 2021, he gave his personal cell phone to state police detectives who were investigating the death. However, on February 9th of 2021, Matthew used his work cell phone to make and delete 2 Google searches. First, he searched for the deleted, can deleted iMessage be recovered via Cellbrite? Cellbrite is a tool that forensic examiners use to extract data from cell phones. Then he searched for the deleted, can you revoke consent to Massachusetts? And as a reminder, there were many, many times that Matthew said, get rid of that. Delete that, sweetheart. Good girl. Once he was on administrative leave, besides the bar incident, he also was at a social gathering where he actually made fun of Sandra for the fact that she had been hung by a doorknob. And then he just ended up entirely resigning. Now, here's what's interesting. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people are very upset about this case, because Police Chief Donna McNamara didn't release her internal investigation until 19 months after she began the internal investigation. And the report was incredibly shocking. There was not only Matthew involved, but there were 2 additional officers involved. And this is at the time when her report was assumed to be death by suicide. Turns out there were 2 additional men by the name of Robert Devine and William Farwell. William was Matthew's twin brother. All 3 men had been leaders at the academy when Sandra had been attending in her youth. Ironically, by the time that report was turned over, Matthew and Robert had already resigned. William had been being looked into, and he also gave his resignation as he denied any allegations of being intimate or messaging Sandra at all. Now, when William had been interviewed, he had lied completely about Sandra. Remember, William is Matthew's twin brother. He told them that the last time he ever saw Sandra was on December of 2020, but the investigation showed that he had inappropriately involved himself in some way, at least after midnight on January 10th of 2021. Robert Devine had been messaging Sandra through Facebook between November 2020 and February. Communications included while he was on duty. He also was untruthful when he was interviewed April of 2022. He denied contact with her entirely. He was told in the interview that they had not found any evidence of communication at that time, and his response was, "Because you won't find it." Now, amidst the walls closing in heavily on Robert Devine in August of 2022, that was when he gave his resignation, and he said it's effective for the next day. And he was retiring around that time. That's a whole other thing. If you are looking for more information legally against Robert Devine and William Farwell, you should check out the podcast called The Case. All of this information is a resource, but it's also additionally the deep dive, and in my opinion, the best deep dive on this case when it comes to how creepy and what liars all 3 of these men were, especially Robert Devine and William Farwell. In that podcast, they elaborate more through a victim as well. Multiple victims actually speak on the podcast, but they wanted to remain anonymous because of the repercussions of them being police officers. But they get up on there and they talk anonymously about their experience with Robert Devine and just what a creep he was when he was a youth counselor at the time. So why now? Why is this case such a hit now with Sandra Birchmore? It was back in 2021. Well, the truth is, Sandra has had many people in her corner trying to get this story out and get more discovery on it for years. Thankfully, Sandra's remaining family hired Dr. Michael Bodden, a former chief medical examiner in New York City, against the word of the state office of the chief medical examiner, who had originally said that there was no foul play and this was definitely suicide. This was his word against that. So in May of 2021, that was when her death was officially ruled a suicide. But by June of 2024, Dr. Michael said, "I must disagree. Miss Birchmore did not die of suicidal hanging. The cause of Miss Birchmore's death is strangulation, and a manner of the death is homicide." Examples are, not only did Matthew have motive, if we're honest with ourselves, but while the state medical examiner found that Birchmore was pregnant when she died, the office apparently did not send fetal tissue for DNA analysis to determine who the father was. Also, state police records show that investigators asked Matthew in 2021 to provide a DNA sample, but he declined. Swabs from Sandra Birchmore's body, hair, and fingernail clippings and clothing she was wearing were taken for a sexual assault kit. It appears the evidence was not tested, but he says that he believes the kit and fetal tissue could still be examined. Matthew had told Sandra Birchmore that he was not the father of her unborn child and, quote, "It was all over," unquote, and he was blocking her from all forms of communication from that point forward. And you know what? There were a lot of signs through her injuries that indicated she was struggling and could not have done this to herself. There's also the surveillance footage alongside her cell phone data. I mean, there's just so many different things going on here. I'll leave a link down below so you can see more about what that letter entails. So, what came of Matthew? March 21st of 2023, the Post Commission, the state's police oversight agency, votes to decertify Matthew Farwell. And at that time, he agreed to no longer work in law enforcement in Massachusetts and to be added to a national database of sanctioned officers. He does not admit the truth of any allegations against him. August 28th of 2024, Matthew Farwell was indicted by federal authorities on one count of killing a witness or victim. He remains incarcerated at this time, and he has pled not guilty. Additionally to his motive, they had one argument in particular just a few days after Christmas when they fought. She got angry and she kicked him out of the apartment, but before he left, he told her, "I wish you would unalive yourself. I wish you were dead." And the night that he drove all the way to her apartment, it had snowed a foot. There was a storm outside. His wife was very ready to give birth, to the point where 13 hours later, he would be holding his new child. And then Sandra and the baby were suddenly no longer with us after that stormy winter night. Sandra Birchmore's estate has filed a wrongful death lawsuit alleging that both the Farwell brothers and Robert Devine pushed Sandra Birchmore to suicide by engaging in a decade-long pattern of grooming and repeated sexual assault from a young age. All three deny the accusations. It also accuses the town of Stoughton and its police department of negligence in hiring the three officers. The family had a final message for the public. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to the people they associate with, no matter their occupation or their station in life. Pay attention to the relationships they have. It's not always easy to see the signs. We are only this week's headlines, not unlike the millions of other tragedies before and after us. Please learn from our grief and our suffering to cherish life and question relationships. Sandra and her baby were taken. They were destroyed by the very people we teach our children to trust. Their graves were then stepped on by the systems we place our faith in protecting us and delivering justice. That said, above all, always hold them close. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm Chelsea J.